Sometimes we find ourselves drawn to people who leave us hurting, and we don't know why. We don't know why our hearts lean toward the ones who cannot hold them. We don't know why we stay longer than we should, or return after we swore we wouldn't. And if you've ever felt that pull, that strange attraction to someone who breaks you in quiet, familiar ways, then let me speak to you gently, right here, as if it's just you and me, and the truth you've been trying to understand. Because the heart has its own memory, its own language, its own unfinished stories. And attraction isn't always about what's good for us. Sometimes it's about what's familiar. Sometimes we are drawn to the wounds we haven't healed, and without knowing it, we chase the echoes of old pain, hoping somehow it will feel different this time. You might think you're choosing the wrong people on purpose. You're not. Your heart is being pulled by a map it didn't choose. A map drawn in childhood, shaped by the first people who taught you what love felt like. If love came wrapped in uncertainty, if affection came with conditions, if attention had to be earned, not given, then part of you learned to confuse intensity with intimacy. Part of you learned that closeness comes with anxiety, that love is something you chase, something you fight for, something you prove yourself worthy of. And later, when someone comes along who mirrors that early inconsistency, warm one day, distant the next, attentive then cold, expressive then shut off, something inside you whispers, "This feels familiar." Not safe, not healthy, just known. And the familiar, even when it hurts, can feel like home to a heart that never learned anything else. There are people who grow up watching love appear and disappear like light under a door. They grow up feeling like they must earn affection, always trying, always reaching, always bending themselves into shapes that feel acceptable. And when they finally meet someone who makes them work for love in the same way, they don't run, they attach. Not because there is destiny in the connection, but because there is memory. Imagine a child who learned to read the emotional weather of the people they depended on. Every sigh, every silence, every shift in tone. They learned to anticipate distance before it happened, to soften themselves to avoid conflict, to win love before it could be lost. When that child grows into an adult and they meet someone who is inconsistent or unavailable, they don't see a red flag. They see an opportunity to prove themselves again. They see a familiar pattern, and the heart always returns to what it knows, even when it knows it hurts. This is why some people stay in relationships long after the love has turned sharp. They're not addicted to the person. They're addicted to the emotional pattern, the highs, the lows, the moments of sweetness that appear just long enough to keep them hoping. Psychologists call this intermittent reinforcement, a quiet form of emotional gambling. When affection is unpredictable, it becomes intoxicating. A rare reward hits harder than a consistent one. And so you end up chasing the moments that feel good, even if they come wrapped in moments that tear you apart. But hear this, softly. You're not broken for feeling this way. You're not foolish. You're not weak. You learned a version of love that wasn't love at all. It was survival, disguised as affection. It was fear, braided into longing. It was uncertainty you mistook for passion. And when someone arrives in your life who is calm, consistent, and kind, you may find yourself pulling away. You may feel bored, disconnected, or strangely uncomfortable. Not because the connection is dull, but because your nervous system doesn't know what to do with safety. You've spent years bracing for emotional storms. Peace feels like an empty sky. And so you misinterpret calmness as lack of spark, when it's actually the absence of chaos. I want you to picture something. Imagine you've only ever learned to swim in violent waves, waves that crash against you, waves that threaten to pull you under. Then one day, someone offers you a still lake. The water is calm, the air is gentle, and instead of relief, you feel uneasy. You don't trust this stillness. You're waiting for the wave that never comes. That's what real, safe love feels like to someone who grew up inside emotional storms. It feels unfamiliar. And unfamiliar doesn't feel like love, not at first. Let me share with you a quiet story, not extraordinary, not dramatic, but heartbreakingly common. There was a woman named Aisha who grew up with a father who loved her in a way that was warm but inconsistent. He adored her in bursts. One day he was present, engaged, full of laughter, and then suddenly he was far away, lost inside himself, unreachable. She learned early that affection could vanish, that love had moods, that closeness wasn't guaranteed. Years later, she met a man who carried the same pattern: charming, passionate, affectionate, then distant, dismissive, gone. Her heart felt drawn to him not because he loved her deeply, but because he felt familiar. Every time he pulled away, she tried harder. Every time he came back, she forgave. She wasn't chasing him. She was chasing her father's missing warmth, trying to earn it all over again. Then there was Omar, raised by a mother who cared for him in every way except emotionally. She provided structure, guidance, stability, but she couldn't meet him in his feelings. When he cried, she grew stiff. When he needed comfort, she went quiet. He learned that emotions were burdens, that vulnerability pushed people away. As an adult, he found himself drawn to women who were emotionally distant, women who couldn't open up, who kept him at arm's length, who made him earn every drop of closeness. He didn't know he was reliving a pattern. He just felt chemistry. But his chemistry was trauma, dressed as attraction. These stories echo in countless lives. They are whispered in bedrooms, in therapy sessions, in late-night thoughts when you're lying awake, wondering why you can't stop wanting someone who keeps hurting you. But if you're listening to this now, I want you to hear something clearly. Not as a lesson, not as a lecture, but as reassurance. It is not your fault that you're drawn to people who hurt you. Attraction is not a conscious choice. It is a reflection of unhealed attachment, a reflection of old emotional maps, a reflection of what you learned before you even knew who you were. But here is the part that matters most. Once you understand the pattern, you can begin to break it. Awareness is the first step toward choosing differently. When you understand why the wrong people feel so right, their pull becomes less powerful. When you can name the pattern, you stop feeling trapped inside it. When you realize that the intensity you crave is not love, but anxiety mistaken for passion, something inside you starts to shift. Real love is not supposed to feel like fear, not like uncertainty, not like being chosen one day and forgotten the next. Real love feels like presence. It feels like safety. It feels like honesty without games. It feels like being seen without having to perform. It feels like being valued without having to beg. And yes, it might feel unfamiliar at first. It might feel strange, maybe even dull, because you're not used to peace. You're used to survival. But peace is where love grows. So, what do you do now? You let yourself relearn. You let yourself slow down. You give yourself permission to explore connections that don't feel like emotional whiplash. You allow yourself to be loved without chaos. You let calmness become familiar. You let consistency feel safe instead of boring. You allow yourself to be chosen without earning it. Somewhere inside you is a younger version of yourself who is still waiting for the kind of love they never received. They're still trying to win affection, still trying to prove their worth, still trying to fix something they were never responsible for. Healing begins when you take that younger self by the hand and whisper, "You don't have to repeat this anymore." And maybe the next time someone enters your life with gentleness instead of intensity, with clarity instead of confusion, with presence instead of unpredictability, you won't run. You won't feel the urge to sabotage it. You won't crave the chaos of the past. Instead, you'll recognize something quieter, something steadier, something healing. You'll recognize love, not the kind that wounds, but the kind that mends. Not the kind that leaves scars, but the kind that closes them. Not the kind that feels like home because it hurts, but the kind that feels like home because it's safe. And maybe, for the first time, you'll choose someone who doesn't activate your wounds, but helps them rest. So if you've been attracted to people who hurt you, if you've been trying to understand why your heart pulls you toward the same patterns, let this settle inside you gently. You are allowed to outgrow that version of love. You are allowed to seek what feels safe. You are allowed to choose peace over intensity. You are allowed to be loved without suffering for it. And I hope, truly, that one day you look back and realize that the people who hurt you were not the definition of love. They were the doorway to understanding what love should never be. And through that doorway, you finally stepped into a different kind of future, one shaped not by past wounds, but by healing.